Welcome to the Hoof and Fang podcast. I'm Kurt Graves.
And I'm Maz Maddox.
What's new, dude?
This past weekend I was able to knock out a ton of words. So I'm in the part of when I'm writing where I'm deeply in love with the story and I just can't wait to get back to it. So yeah, which is the best. And it's going to be a slow decline because this is just part of my process to where I go from being like absolutely in love with it to like fucking hating it.
Sure.
But I'm not there yet. I'm in the puppy love stage. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but I made such good headway over the weekend. So now I'm just like so excited to get back to my chaotic idiot Dallas boy.
Yay. We love your chaotic idiot.
What about you?
This week I am working on our Hoof and Fang audiobook of the month, Eternal Sin. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what's top of mind for me.
That's awesome. I can't wait to start proofing that one. So
it's great. Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
I think listeners are going to love it. And vampires. I don't get to do a lot of vampires.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah. Like I maybe was typecast as werewolf.
Yeah. It's either or, I guess.
From the beginning of my career.
Yeah.
And I guess you only get to do one. So in order to do vampires, I had to create a podcast and a production company and contract with an author. And now I get to do a vampire.
Yay.
Several vampires, in fact.
Great. Well, now your cup runneth over.
So, yeah.
We need to get more vampire submissions is what you're saying.
Well, we'll see how this one's received.
Fair.
We'll see if I'm any good at it. And then we'll take it from there. So,
that's
yeah.
fair. That's fair.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on. Cool. Speaking of Eternal Sin, It comes out 1 week from today.
Yes, so excited.
If you are listening to this podcast, the day it is released, it is 1 week from today. Mm-hmm. And we hope you will enjoy it and tell all your friends and let them know the best deal for that audiobook is to sign up for our Patreon and then just remember to cancel it at the end of the month.
Yeah, if you just want that one. Otherwise, let it ride and you get more free audiobooks.
Right.
So.
Or if you're really not up for that possibility, you can just buy the book outright at our online store. And we hope that you will listen to it, and we hope that you will take the time to let us know what you thought. If you are like a book blogger or a bookstagrammer, or you know someone who is, and they would like to review our audiobooks, have them reach out to us.
Yeah.
We do not have anything officially set up at the moment, but we are certainly open to reviewers with blogs and Bookstagram and whatnot wanting to review the stuff that we do. So yeah, let us know if that's something you are interested in. And then since we're talking about audiobook stuff, I'm just going to throw it out there one more time that we are running our poll in our Patreon for our January audiobook of the month.
Yep. And you guys still have some time to go in and vote.
That goes to the end of the month. So if you are hearing this on the day it comes out, you have like a week and a half.
Yeah.
A little more than that to go cast your vote, check out what the options are, let us know what you are most excited about. And feel free to talk up any of them in the comments or on social media so we can see that enthusiasm.
Yep.
Especially if you are enthusiastic about more than one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let us know. So speaking of things that we enjoy, like audiobooks and voting on cool polls and such, I wanted to pick your brain.
And other things on cool polls.
Yes. Hey. We're ridiculous.
That was last week's discussion.
Yeah, right. Now we're trying to segue here.
Okay.
I wanted to pick your brain about guilty pleasures. So I actually got in my own head about this and was like, am I thinking of the right thing when I'm thinking of guilty pleasures? So I Googled it. It is defined as something such as a movie, television program, or piece of music that one enjoys just despite feeling that it's not generally held in high regard. So the trashy things that you like, that you're kind of embarrassed that you like.
Right. Well, first of all, I'll say that I'm not embarrassed by any of it.
Yeah.
Because I'm almost 40 and who gives a fuck?
Yeah, right. You just let that go at this point.
Yeah, it's just a pleasure at this point. I don't believe in feeling guilty about it, but by that definition,
right?
Yeah, I maybe have a couple things I could talk about.
Yeah.
Do you have a couple things you could talk about?
For sure. I have a weird relationship with guilty pleasure stuff because I'm definitely in the same ballpark where I'm almost 40 and I'm like, I don't care what other people think of me. But every once in a while, when I am enjoying something that I know is objectively terrible, I'm a little embarrassed by it. I'm like,
right.
Oh, yeah, I can see why people don't like this. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
This is crap, but I like it.
Well, and I guess like to a certain degree, if I thought it was crap, I probably wouldn't enjoy it.
That's fair.
But yes, sometimes I am aware that like in the zeitgeist or like popular opinion is this isn't very good.
Yeah.
But I still like it. I still think it's good.
Yeah.
I think it has value.
Yeah.
And therefore it does.
That's
because
fair.
it's for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's how I feel, where I'm like, it makes me happy. So it does have value. But also, I guess I'm just so used to a lot of the stuff that I like just being crap. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is bad. I still like it.
Yeah. So what is an example of something that you consider or would be categorized as a guilty pleasure?
So I think what really drove it home was, I think last year or the year before, I did my Spotify Wrapped Up or whatever. So it shows you like what you've been binging for that year. And I was having my moment of being really into like 8-bit chiptune music, like video game sounding music.
Okay.
And it's very niche and it's ridiculous. But like I was like, it helped me daydream. I was just really into it. So I listened to a lot of it. So I was comparing my weird playlist against like my other friends who are listening to like really cool stuff, or like I've got metalheads that are like really into cool metal music, and like somebody else who's like really into Taylor Swift or something.
So many people who are really into Taylor
that's
Swift.
like everyone. But
and then
like,
meanwhile, on yours is like do 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 do.
Yeah, it was that. And I was like, I'm never sharing my Spotify Wrapped Up ever again. I was like so embarrassed.
And it helps you be productive, though. That's good. Better than the porn music you were listening to earlier today.
You know what? Shut up. I was listening to Lo-Fi Girl, and it took a little bit of a lean that
it was just, it veered into.
Yeah, you leaned in. You're like, what are you listening to?
Yeah, I was like, what is that?
I thought you were working.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. My guilty pleasures probably veer more towards things that I am loyal to that maybe I shouldn't be.
Okay.
So I have two examples of TV shows that I watch that I will never stop watching as long as they're making them, and people generally think they're not good.
Okay.
The first is the Sex and the City sequel,
Okay.
And Just Like That.
Yeah.
I don't care that people think it's bad.
That's fair.
I don't care that people don't like some of the characters who they have added to the show. I loved that series when it was on. I enjoyed the movies, even the bad one.
Okay.
Those girls are my friends. I like the friends that they make in the shows.
Yeah.
I am just happy they're back on my television, and I will enjoy watching them do whatever they want to do.
That's fair.
That's for me.
Yeah.
That's for me. That show is for me. And clearly it's for enough other people that they keep making it.
I was about to say, they've got like a sequel and a bunch of movies, so it can't be that terrible if everyone, like, if it has that kind of a fan base.
Right.
So.
And then the other one is newer. I'm very into the Gilded Age right now,
Okay.
which is Julian Fellows, who made Downton Abbey, has created basically like an analog to that show, but takes place in New York City instead of England.
Okay.
So, period costumes and
Yeah.
intrigue and melodrama. I mean, it's a soap opera.
For sure.
But I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So, and again, I think critics are mixed on whether or not we would call that good.
Fair.
But I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it has actresses that I love in it. So, like, I want to watch them.
That's fair.
I want to watch.
Yeah.
I'm
If
going
it
to
makes you
enjoy
happy,
myself. And I'm not going to feel bad about it.
That's
Something
fair.
I should feel bad about.
Okay.
And I don't know. Maybe I should feel guilty about this. But I like to hate watch that YouTuber who does makeovers on YouTube.
That's a very unique type of guilty pleasure, because you're watching it anger, like with anger like boiled into
I
it.
cannot be the only one who hate watches things.
Oh, I do. I absolutely
Certainly
watched
not.
an entire series on Netflix that was garbage, and I hated it, but I watched it. And so every time Alex would walk in, he's like, why are you still watching this? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm so mad at it, but I just let it run.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Our brains are weird. But yeah, I think my trashy TV thing, I had to think about it because I was like, well, my default was The Office, but I don't think The Office is bad. I think I just watch it a lot.
Many people like The Office.
Yeah, but I think the thing that I watched that I always a little embarrassed by was I was really into Hoarders for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
And that's garbage. Like, that's just objectively terrible.
Yes.
So after I learned that the show is actually exploitive and terrible, I don't watch it anymore. Right. But for a while, I was like, I watched that and I was like, that was my guilty pleasure thing. And I was like, this is terrible. I was like, I watched the shit out of it. So yeah, I think that was my one, like, no, that one's actually bad.
Yeah.
Don't watch that.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shouldn't be making entertainment out of people's mental illnesses.
Right. Yeah, because when I first watched it, I was like, oh, they're getting help. And then when you actually look into it, you're like, oh, they're super not helping these people at all. That's bad.
Not in any productive way.
No, not really.
Maybe like 1 in 100 people.
Sure.
The little pittance of help that they offer with the cameras on them.
Yeah.
In a super high stress situation, do they get something out of it? But mostly they're
probably not
making. They're just making it worse most of the time.
They're making it worse to make a buck, and that's terrible. So yeah, that's an actual not guilty pleasure, just bad. Right. Just don't watch it.
Right.
But yeah, that and do you have a movie that you think is just like most people don't like that you other than the Sex and the City ones?
I could maybe put Julie and Julia in that bucket.
Okay.
But Meryl Streep was nominated for an Oscar for it, so
I don't think
we can call it bad.
Yeah.
I think we can say that it's held in high regard.
Okay.
Same with maybe The Devil Wears Prada, basically Streeps in which movies in which there is a Meryl Streep.
You could just call them Streeps
even when they're not great.
Yeah.
Streepies.
Yeah,
Streepies. Mm-hmm. I enjoy her and I enjoy her performances.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy Julie and Julia because there's also France and cooking and healthy adult marriages, which
nice.
When do you see that in entertainment?
Never.
So that's more of a comfort watch than a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
But that would be the closest thing I could think of to something that I would feel guilty about watching.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I think comfort watch and guilty pleasure, those lines blur quite a bit.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. How about you?
Mine was Sucker Punch. Did you ever see that movie?
I know the movie.
Yeah.
Me and Violence.
Right. Yeah, it's violent. But
I'm a lady.
But I went and saw that movie and thought it was so great. Mm-hmm. And everyone else who's ever watched it is like, that movie's garbage.
Right.
But I liked it. Yeah. It is bad. It's a terrible movie. But I was super into it. I was like, freaking cute ladies punching things in the face with over the top action and fun music and stuff. Right. I was like, yeah, it's my jam. But yeah, no, it's bad.
Right. Well, by that measure too, basically any Marvel thing I watch at this point, I'm a hanger on. Mm-hmm. I'm loyal. I'm sticking with it. It doesn't mean I can't acknowledge that it's bad.
Yeah.
But I'll watch it again because it's
fun.
It's fun for me.
Yeah.
I like seeing superheroes.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I'm so far behind on that
I've watched The Eternals 5 times and everybody's like, it's the worst one. And I was like, it's pretty.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, if you're still hanging on to the Marvel stuff, that's why you're watching it. It's pretty.
It's pretty.
There's pretty effects. There's pretty people in it. Mm-hmm. They're feel-good movies. Who cares?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, what about food? I added this as an extra, I think, because I was hungry. Do you have a guilty pleasure food that you're not supposed to eat, but it's your
most
favorite?
Most of them?
Most foods.
Most of them?
Yeah.
I mean, most food is bad for us?
I think so.
Right.
At this point, yeah.
Right.
When we're chasing down 40 at this, if I had too many chips yesterday and had heartburn, I was like, is that my life? Is that where I'm at?
Yeah.
That's fun. Cool. Love it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. If it didn't come from the ground, we're not supposed to be eating it anymore.
No.
Including animal protein. It's all going to make us feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say, I am a cake person. I'll never say no to cake.
Yeah.
And I feel like people aren't giving cake its due. Mm-hmm. You can go to birthday parties and there is no cake.
What?
You can go to weddings and there is no cake.
That's travesty.
If I see one more fucking ice cream bar at an event, I'm going to throw the table over. Where's the
that's
goddamn
a crime.
Cake?
Yeah, that's no.
Cake is not something you just make for a Tuesday. It's always for the special event. And if we don't start having it, if we don't keep having it at special events, it's gone forever.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You can't erase that. That is why you go to those events. I mean, I guess because you're friends with people.
Celebrate the person, blah, 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 blah.
But the cake. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I'm sweets is my thing. Like that is, I will always want dessert, even if I'm super full.
Sure. Well, it makes room. There's always room for dessert.
Yeah, it's a separate
because it usually melts.
Yeah.
Or squishes into the empty spaces. Yeah. No, that's just physics.
Yeah, that's science.
And biology. So yes, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
I'm totally going to get some cake on the way home.
Yeah.
I'll just stop and get one of those like big fat slices. I'll have to eat it in the car because Alex is on a diet. So
yeah. The only other thing that I would say is a guilty pleasure food wise is like car trip food.
Oh yeah.
Like I just firmly believe that if you were in the car for more than an hour, you need a salty snack, you need a sweet snack or like a gummy.
Yeah.
So like a licorice or gummy bear or Sour Patch Kids or something like that.
Right.
And then also chocolate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need those three things.
That's if you're not eating like a toddler when you're on a road trip, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
Like you have to be eating some just pure garbage. Otherwise you're not on a road trip.
Right.
That's part of it.
Because it sits in the gut better.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't want to be making a lot of bathroom stops.
Right.
So you need something that just kind of sits in the gut.
Yeah, it doesn't
and
digest.
says hello a couple days later after you've reached your destination.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're like overly processed, so you don't have to, like, it takes your body a long time to break it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Science.
Yeah. Man, we were educating people today. How the stomach works, how food's processed.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome.
Yes. That's why they really dial in.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of learning about things, we had a surprisingly philosophical and educational conversation with author Mia Monroe. We were supposed to be talking about eternal sin.
Right.
Which we did.
We
do talk about that. But we also got into some pretty big questions about vampire, like what would in real life, what would a vampire be like and how could they affect society? And also some pretty like deep conversations about like sex and sexuality. So Mia Monroe is obsessed with vampires, mermaids, and tattoos, all of which make regular appearances in her books. She's fluent in sarcasm, addicted to caffeine, same, and easily amused by memes. She may or may not be a witch. Her books are low to mid-angst, high heat, and celebrate the many ways people of all types can fall in love, even the paranormal kind. After all, love is love.
Love that.
Here is our strangely deep conversation with Mia Monroe. Welcome back to the podcast, author Mia Monroe.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
Yeah, welcome back. As we were just saying, you are our first return guest. Milestone for us.
Yeah.
Badge of honor for you.
There you go. Do I get a little back? I want a gold sticker.
It's in the mail.
Yeah, I was supposed to say, we'll get some stickers like crafted, I think.
But what's exciting is that you're here today, one, on your own. So last we talked to you was when we were talking to you about work that you do with the author Cam Newhold. This is just you. And the reason you're here is to talk about Eternal Sin, which is our November audiobook of the month.
So excited.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to chat about this book and just to let our listeners know more about it. Before we do that, though, do you just want to give like the short version of your story again for anybody who may have missed the first episode?
How I got here. I actually think it's kind of a funny story because I lived in Massachusetts. I grew up in Massachusetts, which if you're familiar, or at least you've heard some rumors, it's kind of a haunted place. And you grow up just, it's normal to you. I used to walk through really decrepit cemeteries to get to school because it was a shortcut. And
that is cool.
Yeah, and those kinds of things they're just part of your norm. You know, old
it's like hocus pocus.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, it is. And I lived in Salem, actually, for a while.
Amazing.
I was a teenager, so I'm sure my
like in Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, I know. Funny, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know why, given my experience with that it took me so long to embrace paranormal. But it did. And so when I first started writing, for some reason, I just naturally went into contemporary. And again, I don't know why. I think that's just because that's what I was reading at the time. Mm-hmm. So that was just the segue that I took. And then sometime in, I think it was 2021, I read a book by Lily Morton called On a Midnight Clear. And it's a story, if you don't know, I won't spoil it, but it's a story about a guy who's basically in love with a statue, and the statue comes to life with some magic and other cool things happen in the book. And I was so swept up by this world that she created. And granted, Lily Morton is an exceptional writer, but I wanted to be able to create something like that for people. And when I started thinking about it, I just naturally gravitated to vampires. I think that's always been an allure for me because they're at least how they're depicted. They're kind of sexy and they're kind of a little dangerous so they've got the bad boy vibe. But I also like that they're very, they look human, so they could just blend in with society and they could just be walking amongst us and we would have no idea.
I was just about to say, I think that is part of why they are so popular. It's the notion that anybody they just look like us, and most myths say that they used to be us, like they are humans who became supernatural. And I think that is always sort of an appeal to people as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
I mean, I know I was not the only kid waiting for a genie to give me my powers, or for Zordon to call me up in action as a Power Ranger. All those stories about teenagers getting mutant spiders, please come bite me.
Right.
All of it. Those stories where it's you were just a normal kid, but then fate intervened. Yeah. And now you have cool superpowers and can't die.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I think that is the appeal of vampires I agree with you, is one, they were human like us. And I liked so I'm also a huge history buff. So I like the idea that you can live for, hundreds of years and experience things. Although this particular period in time is not so great, but if I had been alive, for a few hundred years, I'd seen some cool stuff, right? So I guess that's why vampires appeal to me, and so I just stepped out on a limb and decided to go for it. I'm a huge fan of Interview with the Vampire, the 1994 movie, and so I just wanted to kind of capture that as best as I could in a more modern way, which is what my first series, Covens of Eaton Falls, was an attempt to create.
This is a total non sequitur, and I'm sorry that I'm doing this so early in our conversation, but the way we were talking about how they live for such a long time, it makes me wonder, would a vampire ever go into politics?
I feel like that would be tricky, though, wouldn't it? Because, I mean, they'd
have to leave the political scene eventually.
Yeah, they'd have to die off or something. Right. Because, your life is under a microscope at that point.
Yeah, but think of the wisdom and the experience that would come with, they could fix some shit.
If they were good.
Because, history repeats itself, and it's because we're so bad at remembering the things we've gone through before.
And we're bad at associating it to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? We can't... We can see things that happen to some other culture, some other people, but we have difficulty relating that to our own modern experience, which if you just try, it's really easy, but a lot of us don't. And what I think is really funny about you saying that is because before I came up with Immortal Assassins, my idea actually was a government takeover.
Nice.
By vampires. But as I got into it more with the current political environment being so unpleasant, I felt that it was kind of too much art imitating life or the other way around. And so I backed off of that because I didn't have intention to write it with a very heavy political focus, like realism or real events. But I thought it could really be just reading a blurb or a title could really put some people off. If, we're all trying to avoid politics sometimes when we're reading. So I actually switched gears a little bit. But to your point, I actually thought it would be fascinating if vampires were running the country. Yeah. Because for one, they do have the background. And for two, a lot of lore, they have a skill called compulsion. So they could basically just make you do what they want you to do. So no more problems with, Congress and Senate and everybody fighting if the vampires were in charge. So
right. I think if it was run
could
by
be fun.
The cast of What We Do in the Shadows, we might have a fighting chance. But I don't know, man, because there's some bad vampires out in stories and stuff.
There are
what
bad
if
humans.
Dracula was president? Bad, So I don't know.
Well, What We Do in the Shadows cast, they didn't do very good on the Vampiric Council, so I don't know.
I feel like I'd be like, wow, that looks like a disaster. You have my vote. We may as well give it a shot.
It's got to be better, right, than what we've got going. So I'd vote for a vampire, sure.
Yeah, let's just roll the dice.
A few years ago, I was like, I'll vote for a drunk monkey if anything but the,
Yeah. Yeah, before we say too much.
I
should have known better than to go politics. That thought, which just came out of nowhere, of like, oh my God, somebody with that much history and experience, what's a great job for them.
Right.
Either assassin or politician.
Yeah.
And my Coven's guys in the first series were actually very old. So they had been around in ancient BC times. And that was really fun because I had them talking in a contemporary context about people that were well dead, like Cleopatra and people like that. The current
Cleo,
series,
sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I haven't been here since Cleo
Don't
was
let her get drunk at a party.
Yeah, exactly. They knew her firsthand. And then, but this current series, the Assassins, they've only been around for maybe 300 or 400 years. The oldest one.
So, if you're a huge history nerd, do you have a specific time in history you really like, or a point, or somewhere in the world history, world history that you're really into?
Yeah, I'm mostly into, so favorite time period is the Italian Renaissance. Favorite continent, I suppose, is Europe in general, because it all kind of ties in together, right? So much was happening around the same time. It's funny because, again, I grew up in Massachusetts, and I'm so sick of American history, particularly the Revolutionary War, because you get a lot of that when you live in Boston. You have to go see the recreation of the Boston Tea Party 20 times in your life. So I'm not really, I'm well aware of American history, early American history, but I'm more intrigued by the history I wasn't so commonly exposed to. I like ancient Egyptian stuff too. It's kind of cool.
Well, and a lot of what we know from history is what was written down. And it's very European focused because that's what we've bothered to save. Even though there are rich histories in oral tradition in many other parts of the world, what we can read about, it's mostly the white folks in Europe.
Yeah.
History is written by the victors, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big gap in history for sure. But with the world evolving the way it has, and mostly the internet, you're getting more and more exposed to these other stories, which is really, again, for someone like me, it's really cool, especially because I'm not white. And so it's really interesting to find out all these other things that were happening, and not just the Revolutionary War.
Yeah,
absolutely. So let's talk specifically about the book that we have coming out next week. Can you tell us a little bit more about Eternal Sin, and specifically the two gentlemen who we meet and follow their story?
Yeah, so Sin is one of the vampires, and it's funny because he didn't come to me first. It was actually Thorn, who's one of the other brothers in the story, who gets a book that I'm about to start writing next week. Thorn came to me first and the most vividly, but I didn't start with his story because I felt like Thorn is a character, and I felt like we kind of had to ease into getting to Thorn's story. So Sin came to me first, and the funny thing about it too is the place where I go and get all my tattoos, the store manager there is a female whose name is actually Syntiki, but she spells it S-Y-N and the rest. And so I was like, can I borrow your name? And she said, sure. So Sin was born. And
that's amazing. Do you usually ask permission?
No.
Okay. I was gonna say, would you really not have used it if she was like actually?
No, but I knew she'd be cool. Plus, I knew I'd see her again.
Yeah.
Right.
And they know what I do at the shop because my tattoo artist tells everybody.
Great.
So I was like, she could kind of come across that one day, and so I let her. And then she showed me the tattoo on her leg, which is two men engaged in things that are. It's a good place for it because you can
intimate hugging
when you need to. Yeah,
I was gonna say wrestling.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, well, she's okay with what I do for a living.
When two men love each other very much, they wrestle.
Exactly, they wrestle naked. So I just happened to have that conversation with her when she told me her name, and I saw how it was written. Anyway, I built the character around the name, and I built the titles around Sin's name. Because they're kind of, his is kind of a pun, if you will, Eternal Sin. So I also have this vision in my mind of Bowie, who I had this idea of Dorian Gray, kind of. This just unusually beautiful man, but he wasn't aware of it, unlike Dorian Gray. So he was just living his life, trying to survive, doing his thing. And he comes across Sin committing a murder. But that's Sin's job. And Sin sees him and is just immediately, swept up in him and proceeds to be a little creepy, but in a vampire kind of way, stalking Bowie and pursuing him and ultimately finding out that they're fated mates.
Yeah. I have to admit, so the premise of the book is very cool because they are hired assassins.
They are.
Great job for vampires.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I had to read enough of it to make sure that it wasn't too scary for me.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't do scary things.
I know. I love that about you.
And I don't do dark romance because it freaks me out. So I had to make sure it wasn't too dark.
Yeah. Fair.
But the way it makes so much sense, the way you have not only the way you've written it, but also the way, like, the clients that they take and the people that get axed, you bring me on board for that.
Oh, good. And I definitely, it was hard to kind of figure out where it falls because I didn't want dark romance readers to think it was a dark romance because they would be disappointed.
Right.
But I didn't want to scare off people who are used to what I write,
like
thinking it was going to be too dark. And in my Coven series, my vampires don't really do anything like that unless they have to. And they don't take on any mortals, really. They are fighting other supernatural beings in covens. But in this world, they're in a contemporary world in an urban environment, and they're taking on real mortal people and killing them in cold blood, but they are vampires and they are also assassins. So I think the contrast was showing them in the rest of the time when they're not working, they're kind of marshmallows, they're kind of sweet guys. They're brooding, dark vampire kind of guys, but Thorn isn't. He's just a character. But I wanted to make sure people who currently read me still understood that the romance itself is typical of what you would expect of Mia Monroe. It's very low angst. There's external angst going on, and there's definitely some blood and gore that's not typical for my contemporary romances, of course. But, it's not creepy, and it's not scary, and it's not too violent. Well, it's kind of violent, but it's not...
it's violent. It's not gratuitous.
Violence. Yeah, it's expected violence. And it's coming. You always know it's coming.
Yes. And it's in service of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, again,
they have a job.
Because it's part of their job, and it's also part of their nature, which is, I guess, is another part of vampires that maybe might appeal to some part of us that like
the monster part.
Like the fact that they need to drink blood, like the violence is necessary to live, and we work very hard not to be violent people.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I do. Sometimes I have to turn that voice off in my head.
Right.
And vampires get to embrace it.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think that polite society requires us to, contain a lot of our rage and anger and things that we might like to say and do to people that upset us. Vampires don't have that moral compass. They don't abide by society's rules at all. And even one of them, I'm not sure if it's Sin or Midnight, says, we fit into the level that we want to fit in. So they blend in with society enough to function, but underneath it all, they follow their own rules. They don't abide by what society says is the polite thing to do. If you cut a vampire off in traffic, you might lose your head. I suppose that could happen now too, but you're going to go to jail and all that other stuff for it if you do, if you commit some kind of road rage here. But a vampire could make it look like nothing ever happened and you're just gone.
Right.
So I do think that's some of the appeal of a morally gray character, that they can get away with some of those base instincts that the rest of us have to repress.
Well, and I think you balancing like that scariness of them being able to commit murder and it's fine, or like being able to drink blood and that's just part of who they are, with them, like you said, being like marshmallows on the inside. That's, I think, so necessary when you're writing those kind of would-be terrifying love interests, because you have to make them more human, even though they're not, like you have to make them likable. So you give them the gooey center, which of course I'm a huge fan of. I love making monsters the like big cinnamon rolls. Like that's my favorite trope.
Yeah. And I think you're right, Maz. I think if you don't, especially with a vampire, I think you have to show that there's still some semblance of their humanity that they've held on to. And it mostly shows up in the fact that they can have these chosen family environments that they are very committed to. They banter like brothers and sisters, but they also, when they meet the person that they're meant to be with, it kind of unlocks that humanity that was always there. And I think that's one of the important things of writing probably any supernatural character, a monster, a shifter of any kind, a vampire, anything that can be dangerous. There still has to be something in them that we can all relate to. And being in love is something that we can all relate to, whether we're, violent bloodsuckers or regular people.
We're having a very philosophical discussion about vampires, but as we're talking about it, I'm also thinking just like the idea that if they're living so long and they don't fundamentally change like personalities, at least in the world you've created, like it's not like they become a vampire and they become someone else. And I think in most vampire lore, they continue to have their own thoughts and feelings, just with like extra. Somebody who lives for 300-400 years, several thousand years, it's not that they're not human. They might be more human than we ever get the chance to become.
I mean, it's a good point, because it's basically you, but without the confines of knowing that there's a finite amount of time on Earth. So you really just get to be full you all the time, because what do you got to lose? And
largely unworried about the consequences of day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Always unworried. And I think that for some of them, you can see sadness in them because of that. Like Eve, the character Eve, has a sadness about him because he's been alive longer than the rest of them. He made all of them. And he also has, tried many times to find love, and he hasn't been successful at that. And I think that regardless of the fact that he's a vampire, like that's something that we can all really relate to. But think about it. We have maybe a short amount of years that might be a concern. He has infinite number of years. And so there's a sadness about him. If you've ever seen the movie Only Lovers Left Alive, it's a really artsy kind of quirky vampire movie with Tilda Swinton and
Tom Hiddleston, right?
Tom Hiddleston, yeah. And Tom Hiddleston.
We like Tom Hiddleston. I don't know.
Yes.
I like both of them.
Listen.
I like them, yeah.
Yeah, this is some just bisexual disaster shit for me.
Okay,
like,
good. I
Exactly.
didn't want to speak for the group, but we like Tom Hiddleston around here, and I admire Tilda Swinton.
And it's a very good movie. You're funny. It's a very good movie, but it centers around he's very lonely and he's depressed, and he's just tired. He's just tired of living. He just doesn't want to anymore. And I think that would be a very real thing for a vampire to go through at some point in their existence. You know, that one of the things that makes life, I guess, sort of vibrant for us is that we know there's an end date. We don't know when, but we know that this isn't forever, right? You hear you only live once and carpe diem. I have a carpe noctem shirt on right now, but we know that you have to enjoy the moment because it's fleeting. The vampires don't have that. So I do think that they all react slightly differently to that. Like Thorn, for example, vampires don't feel the sensitivities of things like we do. Like we drink a cup of coffee to get a little boost. We drink wine or alcohol to get a little drunk. We smoke a little weed. A vampire isn't even affected by that. So he goes to these like extremes that would kill a normal mortal just to feel something because he's just bored.
Did you ever see the either read the comics or watch the series Preacher?
No, I've never even heard of it.
There's a vampire in that is probably my favorite version of a normal person getting powers they don't need at all. So he is this unhinged, crazy drug addict vampire who's just nuts. Like he just the same kind of behavior. Like he does this crazy shit just because he's been alive so long. Like why not?
Why not?
So he's just doing like he drinks antifreeze because like that's the thing that can now get him high because he's so like desensitized from everything else. And I just love that because I'm like, if you're just a regular person who now is alive perpetually till whenever you feel like just walking into the sun, basically, you kind of have to like make your own fun. You know what I mean? Like, and he's just, it's like, I love that concept when it comes to humans just being human too long. You're going to hit a wall eventually.
You're going to hit a wall. Exactly. And I also think that's why it's really funny that, vampires are, in my world, they're always bisexual or gay because, like, why would you be straight? Yeah. Like, why would you be straight anyway? But, like, why would you be straight for eternity if you didn't have to be? Obviously, sexuality is, not a choice, but you know what I'm saying. It's fiction. So all my vampires are... I
think the concept there is that there are far more people on the spectrum of sexuality than currently acknowledge it because they never had to think about it and they didn't have the opportunity to act
they can't.
on it.
Right. Without the confines of religious and societal structures, why wouldn't you go and try something that is offered to you or that you've thought of once or twice? Right. Because there's no negative reason not to,
Yeah. Although I do still think there would be small populations of people who are purely into the opposite sex or the same sex. I do think there are people who fall on the very ends of those spectrums, just far fewer than we currently think.
Yeah, I do believe there are people that are actually straight, I think. But I think there are less people that are actually straight than what we think or what they think. Because of that whole, a lot of us were raised in environments where, you just did what you did because that's what was expected of you. Or we grew up in a time like I did. I grew up in a time where nobody even said the word bisexual. And if they did, it had a very negative connotation to it. It was like swingers and people that weren't real ethical with their sexuality. And so plus I was like a teenager at the time, so I never would have been like, I'm bisexual. I was just like, I'm straight, but I like kissing girls sometimes. What? Isn't everybody do that?
Yeah.
So
no, first of all, sadly. But I do, like, I use myself as an example all the time of, like, I don't think I grew up in a particularly religious household. My parents weren't fanatics. We went to church every Sunday. And I lived in a largely conservative area, but not, like, super staunch, like Southern Baptist, like you could not possibly think about being gay. In fact, my parents even had gay friends, I came to find out later in life. But I am still somebody who started to have homosexual feelings before I even knew what gay was.
Yeah.
The concept had not been introduced to me early enough in life to understand the feelings I was having inside my own head and body.
Yeah.
So like that, when people are like, not quite understanding the expectations thing, or like how much education and representation can matter. It's like, I am an example of like, if only by 12 years old, any human person in my life had said the word gay and explained what that meant, I would have known what was happening. Instead, I spent years being confused and upset and thinking it would just go away.
My 20s would have been, my 20s forward would have been real different had I understood that bisexuality was a thing that happens to non-weird people and non-married swingers.
The luckiest people.
Yes, and that dating women could have been a choice for me. I didn't even recognize that as an option. And now I'm in my 50s recognizing it, kind of pissed off about it, but better late than never, I suppose. So yeah, representation does matter and discussions do matter. And I think that's why we have to keep fighting, against the people that don't want it mentioned, don't say gay, don't talk about it in schools and things like that. And I think that's why we also have to write books with gay dinosaurs and vampires and dragon shifters. And so that some little, hopefully...
Occasionally humans.
No, 12-year-olds.
We sprinkle them in.
Yeah, they've all got human mates. But
that's so true.
Yeah.
Well, no. Some of your guys fell in love with our dinosaur shifters.
In the dinosaur. And in Mika Nix, one of our dragons is with another shifter, but I was about to say so some kid could find it, but hopefully no kids find our books, but they find them when they turn 18.
Older kids.
Older adults, older kids and stuff, so they know that this stuff is normal and that and they can be that too. They don't have to hide for so long.
Yeah. Well, and just a piece of my own family right now. So my mom is my biggest fan and she's amazing, but she didn't know a lot of this terminology. She didn't know what a lot of this stuff was until she started following my work and reading my posts and reading my books, and we'll have these cool conversations about it. I recently found out that one of my, what's the gender neutral term for like niece or nephew?
Nibbling.
One of my nibblings has recently told her that they're queer. And so my mom, now armed with all this information, was able to approach it being like, I know what that is. And like, I understand. And like,
P-flag grandma.
Yeah. She was like so excited that she, like, this person was able to like, felt comfortable coming to her and stuff. And so we were talking on the phone about it yesterday. And she was like, I just, I now know how to like approach this. And I know it's important to like not out them too soon. And we're like kind of discussing like how we want to go about doing that and all this stuff. And it was one of those cool moments because of course I'm proud of my mother and my nibbling for both of those things. But like, had I not talked to her about this stuff, or like, had she not had the vocabulary, she would have been completely taken off guard and not known how to navigate the situation. But because that is now such a normal thing for her, she can. And that's awesome. So that stuff is so deeply important.
It is. And your nibbling had that experience of being accepted by somebody, especially from somebody from an older generation of them.
Right.
And you think about how hard it would be. Well, I know, like my grandmother and I were very, very close. She died in 2021. And I didn't utter my sexuality to a single soul in my family in the event that it would somehow make it back to her. No.
Yeah.
And when she passed away, she was 91. So, she lived a great life. But I finally felt comfortable coming out to my brother. And we are close, but I never even mentioned, especially because I've been married to a man for 14 years. So nobody would ever question me as not straight, and I brought it up because his daughter, my oldest niece, is bisexual. And I said, well, so am I. And he was like, oh, cool. And like for him, it was just like, oh, neat, no big deal. But for me, just being able to say that out loud to a family member was just wild. And that's on such a small scale compared to people who have to, have a same-sex partner and come out, or transgender, or, non-binary or something, and explaining all that to their families. And just that small little bit that I experienced, I thought, wow, I can't imagine what it's like on a much bigger scale, or scale that's affecting people, affecting people's perception of you more directly. Right. But
I don't think you can compare coming out experiences. I think as long as it was good, then amazing.
You can.
Because there's pros and cons to each way. I came out at 17. I had a couple other friends who were coming out around the same time, so I wasn't alone. But at the same time, I didn't date anybody for like a year and a half after that. So I got the questions of, how do you know? Mm-hmm. It's like, people don't trust you to know what's going on inside your own mind and heart.
They don't.
Especially at a young age, unless you have proof.
I hate that.
Yeah. But I hate that question. But at the same time, if you come out because you're dating somebody, well, now there's extra scrutiny on that relationship. And like, are you sure you're really gay, or is it just that person? Mm-hmm. Or like, what have they talked you into? Mm-hmm. Is this just a really close friendship and you're taking this the wrong way? Like, people who don't want to believe someone who's coming out will find the justification for not believing them.
It's very true.
And regardless of the situation, it is hard to do. And it is tough to have that very first conversation.
It is true, yeah. My thing I always ask them when they ask, are you sure, or how do you know, is I say, well, how do you know you're straight? I don't even say anything else. How do you know you're straight? Have you ever tried it? How do you know then? And that they get very flustered. But I'm like, well, it's just how I feel. Well, then I think you answered the question. It's just how you feel.
Maybe they don't feel it with as much certainty as they think they should, and that's why they're fighting it.
Totally agree. I totally agree. The more it's psychologically proven. I'm no professor in psychology by any means, but I read a lot, and I pay a lot of attention to these topics, just mostly so I can argue with people. But the more you push back against something, it's almost certainly because it's triggering you. And if it's triggering you, well, why? And I think it's wrong to make fun of, like, the jokes that go around when, like, a pastor or a politician are being especially anti-gay. And, the jokes that, oh, well, he's just secretly gay. And, I think there's some harm in that, because the connotation isn't great. But, unfortunately, that joke exists because it's been proven correct.
I was going to say, but how many times has that happened?
Times. Which sucks. It's been proven correct so many times. But now there's more of like a psychological reason behind it. Like, if you're pushing back against something so much that you're like angry about it and making laws and talking about it on your Sunday pulpit, there's something you should probably deal with a therapist maybe. But I think that, sadly, a lot of people get into situations, whether it be religion or politically, where they find themselves in a corner, if you will, where there's a lot to lose if they were to embrace some of those feelings and thoughts that they're having. And that's by no means a pass for the kind of behavior that goes on. But I really believe that, they marry the perfect woman and they have the kids and they sit in the front row at church on Sunday and they vote for all the conservative measures. And they're doing that because that's kind of the life that they built and got pushed into, and the expectations of it, But with sexuality, I also firmly believe that you can only tamp it down for so long before something's going to bubble up on you, whether it be the urge to act out and experience that, or something unfortunately more negative than that. And I think there's so many cases that we've seen that I don't understand why there's such a difficulty in accepting people's, what they tell you is true, whether it's their sexuality or their gender expression. We've seen it play out. So it's one of those frustrating things to me, because there's plenty of examples of how this can go wrong if we don't embrace people for what they tell us is true.
Amen.
Yeah.
Not where I thought this conversation was going to go.
Yeah, we took like a hard, deep conversation, like segue, like just.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think you should have strong opinions about it if you're going to write queer romance.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Exactly. Just so we can bring the conversation to a close about the book, though, is there anything else you want our readers and listeners to know about Eternal Sin or what's coming up next in the world of the Eternal Sin series? Deadly Immortals, is that what it's called?
Immortal Assassins.
Immortal Assassins, thank you.
I just finished, right before GRL, I finished the 4th book, which is Endlessly Raphael. Next week I start Thorn's book, which is a fan favorite. People are very much looking forward to Thorn. No pressure.
No pressure. We just did that at the same time.
Yeah, we did. After that, I'm writing Eve's book, which is also a fan favorite. Everybody's very excited to hear the original maker's story. I know what his story is, so I'm very excited, but I have to wait like 3 months to start writing it. And then after that, there's going to be a spin-off series that is still in the New Onyx world, and it's going to center on the guys that run Lair, which is their vampire nightclub. And for those that read book 3, Always Arrows, which came out right before GRL, one of the characters that was introduced in that book, Hale, he will be a main character in the spin-off series. So my year 2024 is pretty much planned out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on the pod and for telling us more about Eternal Sin specifically. And our listeners, our Patreon members at the Dear Listener level will be able to hear the first book, Eternal Sin, next week, Friday.
Yeah. Exciting.
I cannot wait.
It was so amazing to have Mia back on the show. Just to remind you guys, the audiobook for Eternal Sin releases next week on November 24th. You can get this exclusive audiobook at our Dear Listener level, or you can grab it at a discount at our Dear Reader level. And as always, the audiobooks are available through our Hoof and Fang audiobook shop as well.
Yeah, and we hope that you will check out all of Mia's social media in the show notes and our social media. You can follow us individually or you can follow the show. Check out our website, which is how you can get to our Patreon and all of our social media. And our audiobook poll. We still want to know what you think about our January 2024 audiobook. Let's start 2024 off with a bang.
Yeah.
Maybe literally, depending on the book you choose. Actually, I think they all have banging. No, maybe. We'll see what happens. The website is hoofandfangpodcast.com, and you can get to our Patreon through that as well. And just so you know, we will be taking off next Friday from the regular pod, but there will still be a surprise for you in the podcast feed. Yes. So we will be back the following week, the first Friday of December, and we will chat at you then.
Yeah, see you then.
Bye.